Hello, and a very warm welcome to Cultural Communication Confidence with me, Victoria Reynoldson. And welcome to episode 21, where we're talking about difficult conversations. So, how do you feel about difficult conversations? I know that I don't find them easy. And I'm very open and honest about that because I'm not sure that anybody particularly enjoys them. Whatever the topic might be, the context, the person or group of people you need to have that difficult conversation with, it is not an easy thing to prepare for, particularly if it involves giving negative feedback, bad news, or if emotions are involved. The emotions make it tricky. And I know myself, either I avoid the conversation for as long as possible because it is something that feels uncomfortable, or alternatively, I find myself sometimes so caught up in the emotion that it can feel like we need to just jump into the conversation before we're ready and before we've had the chance to calm those emotions and really prepare how it is we want to come across. So, I really wanted to reflect on this topic because it is something I get asked about. And I think the first thing to say is that there is no one way which will work every time for every situation and person. And so, I'm going to share with you a couple of ideas here today that might help in the approach, in the planning stages, and what might actually help in the conversation itself on the follow up. But, this is something that is really flexible. And really, as I share these ideas here today, it'd be worthwhile you thinking about which ones will particularly work for you, particularly if you're facing that at the moment, the difficult conversation. Okay, so let's jump into it. So, you need to have this difficult conversation. So, the first idea that I have for you is to let the emotions cool down. Um, Regardless whether this is a professional situation or a personal situation, if there is any sort of emotion attached to that, whether that is about frustration, even anger, upset, then we need to let those emotions calm down first before we have the conversation. Otherwise, we may run into issues where our emotions are leading the conversation. So, take the time you need and really consider, have you had enough space to really cool those emotions? Not only for yourself, actually, but for also the other person potentially, or the other people as well. Then, my next idea is to plan and flag you want to have this conversation. So, I think trying to have difficult conversations and taking somebody by surprise doesn't usually work. So it is worth kind of letting the other person know that you want to have this conversation, what the topic is about, so they also can prepare themselves and feel like they're ready to have that conversation now. Then I want you to think about where you're going to have this conversation. So it might be obvious to just sit down in a meeting room at work and to have that chat, but that may be challenging for one or both of you if it's involving a work issue. So consider, where could you go, which is a neutral space? Could you meet in a cafe, which is offsite, away from work? You might even consider a walking meeting, which is where you're walking side by side and you don't have to directly face each other. That might be sometimes easier depending on what the topic is. Then prepare what you want to say. And there are two parts of this. One is your verbal communication, planning perhaps the actual words you want to say or some of the main points. But also think about what's going on with your voice. Think about keeping your tone of voice neutral and making sure that the emotions don't run back into it. Equally, with your nonverbal communication, think about what you can do to keep your body language open, curious, in a listening mode, rather than signaling emotions through your nonverbal communication and body language. So that's worth preparing and thinking about. When you actually get round to meeting them, I think it is quite important in the opening stages to check they're open to listen. Now, it might seem obvious that if you've arranged a meeting and flagged the topic that they should be willing to listen, but it is worthwhile confirming this and checking in. So, saying to them, I have something I want to share with you here today. I want to share that with you fully. Are you open to listening to what I have to say? Now, hopefully, the answer will be yes, but it is worth doing that check in before you jump into the conversation itself. Now, the next stages are based on a framework which I learnt about, which I think is incredibly helpful to guide the conversation strategy. So, the first part of this is to start with observations. And these should be facts of things that you heard, you saw, or you noticed or observed in the conversation you were in. So, as an example, you could say something like, I noticed yesterday when we were in the meeting that I offered you my ideas. I felt like you didn't acknowledge them. I didn't hear you acknowledge them. So those are the facts. Those are the facts of the situation that hopefully they can't argue against. That was what actually happened. The next part of this is what that makes you think or feel, or what the impact on you is. Now, this is getting a bit more personal. Potentially, emotions might come into this. So, in the situation I just described, I could say something like, you know, when you didn't acknowledge my feedback and my views, I felt frustrated that you didn't value my opinions. And I felt that you were prioritizing other views and voices in the room. So, this is where you can really explain that impact on you. And I understand that, that is something worth preparing and thinking about how you want to express that. So you are clear in how you say it. Now, the next part is a little bit more challenging sometimes, and that is to acknowledge that this is one viewpoint. This is what you've taken out of the situation, but actually, there may be lots of other interpretations or meanings to what happens. The reason for this is that we often jump to conclusions. It's quite easy, it's what our brain does. We tend to find those shortcuts and find what we think is the meaning. But the reality is, we can never really fully understand the true intentions of somebody else or what they really meant unless we ask them. And so, this is what is important at this stage of the conversation. We could say something like, so that's what I took out of the situation. However, maybe I misunderstood or misinterpreted what was going on. Can you help me understand more? Hear that at the end. You're inviting their views now. You're asking them to share. Was there a different intention that they had? Now, it is important to invite them to share their view. However, you need to be careful at this point because what you want to avoid doing is blaming. And also, you need to be aware that depending on the context, you might actually not get a direct answer. You may not actually hear the real reasons for whatever purpose, but actually the person perhaps feels embarrassed or awkward, or there is an intention that they don't want to share here in this conversation. So just be aware that you're giving them that opportunity to share what was going on, but you might not actually get all reason. So, what is important then is to move then swiftly into the next steps or actions. So, what I mean here is to kind of really say, to draw the line and say, okay, what do you want next time to look like? So you can actually flag this. You can say, I'd like now to talk about the future. What would happen if this situation came up again? What I would love to happen is, for example, for you to listen more to my views in the meetings. So, really be clear what it is you want next time. What would good look like, and how would you avoid that situation again? Now, depending on that situation, hopefully it is easy to agree what those next steps and future scenarios look like. But if it's complicated and maybe the other person has a different view of what it should look like next time, then you might spend more time at this stage or even break that conversation over a number of different chats to really get to what does the ideal future look like. And then the final part of this is test commitment. So, really asking them, can I rely on you to make this change next time? And I think that's really a good question because you're really asking them to sign up to agree with you that things will change. And that is really helpful for really making sure that that change is implemented. So let me ask you, what difficult conversations do you need to have? And what parts of this approach are most useful for you? Is it about the preparation and the planning? Is it the conversation strategy itself? Or focusing on the next steps and future? I would love to know how this works for you, particularly. And I'd be really happy to discuss if you're experiencing challenges with difficult conversations right now. Feel free to message me over on LinkedIn. My personal profile over there is Victoria Reynoldson. And if you find yourself experiencing challenging conversations and you feel like you need to particularly improve your communication approach, why not come and have a chat with me about my individual coaching program, 9 Steps to Communication Confidence, or team communication training, which I do to help teams think about how they get through some of these difficult conversations. Of course, if you have enjoyed this episode and you feel that it's been valuable for you, then I would really appreciate it if you could share it with a colleague, a co-worker, or a friend who would really benefit from hearing this. If it has particularly resonated with you, then it'd be amazing if you could subscribe to the show to make sure you receive every episode. And of course, rate it and review it if you have the opportunity on your platform, as that would mean a lot to me and means that the show can get out there more widely around the world. Thank you so much for joining me today for Cultural Communication Confidence, and I look forward to seeing you next time.